Welcome back, friends. This is Dr. G with Cheva Gameplay, coming to you with the fourth of the fifth series of Combat Medic, specifically the Republic Commando series, that we're going to go an in-depth look at the Combat Medic and their role and everything that's awesome about them. Previously, we talked about the combat proficiencies. Now we're going to go through the combat rotation, what you're going to need to do. We'll talk about both PvP and PvE in this little video here as we move forward. So first and foremost, let's get a brief glimpse and we'll do a quick review of our combat proficiencies really quick. We selected Tenacious Defense, we selected Paralytic Combat Stems, which gives us a recharge of 20, and it also gives us, when we're incapacitated, gives us tech ability to do 10% more healing or damage. Also, we get free energy from the efficient conversions, and we got supercharged reserves, reflexive battery, and overclock. We're going to go with forced march right now, supercharged defense, and trauma stabilizers, traumatic stabilizers. So that's what we got going on right now. You'll notice I have no targeting dummy around me. I'm not on the ship, which would have a targeting dummy on it, because I'm not going to really go into too much of the targeting when it comes to the items that we talk about here on the combat rotation. You'll see I have it lined up in a specific order here. For your healer, you're not going to be doing much damage. You can do some damage. It'll be damage that'll be good for minions, but when it comes to bosses, you don't have any. If you remember right, when we did our character sheet, we have 0 accuracy. So all the bosses in PVE world, they have a plus 10% accuracy debuff basically, so you have to have 110 accuracy to be able to hit them. And for our purposes, healing doesn't require accuracy. It's 100% hit every time. So what are our combat rotations today? So for our targeting, what we're going to do, we're a ranged person, so we're going to target. The first shot we're going to take is electronet on a single target. On a single target, the first shot you want to take is electronet if it's a single semi-boss target. Then you'll want to follow that up with your high impact bolt. Your electronet is going to come into handy because it will reduce their movement speed by 50% and deal 23,000 energy damage over 9 seconds, so it's a damage over time. While the affected target that moves will take 20% more damage from electronet. So if he starts moving, which it won't show up on this dummy because the dummy doesn't move, but if they move, then they take more damage over time. Additionally, it will take the high impact bolt, which will allow it to fight, because as you see here, this high impact bolt is only usable against incapacitated targets and targets suffering from periodic damage. So we're going to give our DOT, and then we're going to hit it with the high impact bolt to give it some better damage on there. So let's go with that. We got our single target, boom, we hit him, then we hit him, follow him up with this, and you'll see that he's got the electronet periodic damage, and he's got 5 ticks of electronet over here, and any damage we give is increased over time. You'll also see that we have our critical gets boosted, and it also gives us a supercharge, which, if you remember from the last one, the key to combat rotation is to continually get supercharges. Immediately after we take those, you're going to run into full auto. You want to hit that, boom, 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 boom. You'll see we get a free supercharge with full auto. And the best part about full auto is we can use it while we're running. So we got hammer shot next. This is our free attack. It gives us a supercharge as well. Boom, boom, boom. It gives us 2 actually. That's pretty nice. So we got 1, 2, 3, 4, and then we're all the way up to 6 so far by using our hammer shot a couple times. We can bust it up. This is our little bitty attack that doesn't take any energy, and now we're up to supercharge, so we can super heal some people. So we'll come back to that later. We're still doing combat rotation. After we hit these 4 in a row, then you can move to your charge bolts. This one takes a little minute to actually do because you can't be moving while you do it. But if you do it, what that's going to do is it's going to spin up the assault cannon and give a quick powerful burst, and it's just a simple one-up attack. Next up is you might want to use your tech override. I usually wait on this, and I use it mostly during heals. The tech override will give you your next ability. Will have no timer, and it grants you movement immutability. And so in PvE, it's not always that important unless you're fighting a boss in a boss round, that you'll click this, and then it'll keep the boss from keeping you from moving. Now let's talk about groups. As a healer, your number 2 job will probably want to be managing ads in boss fights. While your tank is up taking the hits and drawing away the boss, and your damaged people are damaging the boss, you want to try to keep the ads down as much as possible. So intermittent in between heals, you want to use some of your AoE attacks. You have this mortar volley, which has a pretty long cooldown, so you might want to time it to be used correctly. The mortar volley is pretty good. It's going to give you some critical increase. It also gives you 1 supercharge as well. So that'll give you a supercharge. But you notice it takes a good amount of energy, and it has a pretty long cooldown, so you want to hold on to that as long as possible. This one as well, the Hail of Bolts, is a good one to follow up the mortar volley. It doesn't give you any buffs other than resetting that critical damage and healing increase. Every time you use any of your attacks here, most of those will give you. Your disabling shot is an interrupt. It's a hard interrupt that won't do anything but interrupt the target. And then your explosive round is pretty good to do a bunch of damage. It does for weak targets, especially ads. It will do an explosion on the ground that will do damage to multiple targets. And then we have our concussive round. This one is again the low level targets. This one will hit, but as you can see, there's a time delay. There's a little explosive round. It works best on the droids instead of the people. Non-weak targets regenerate health rapidly while knocked out, so it knocks them out. It causes damage to them. And then lastly, we've got our concussive charge. And if you remember, when we set up our combat proficiencies, we have the combat proficiency set that will give us 2 supercharges with this. And so not only does it give us a little damage as it shoots out from around us, but it'll also push out all of the ads that come up to us. And so you might want to save that. It has a pretty long cooldown as well. So that's basically your attack. In fact, that's all the attacks you've got available for you. And that's your combat rotation. If it's a single target you want to hit, your electronet, followed up by the high impact bolt, and then followed up by full auto, hammer shot, and then if you got some good time, tick it up there, and then hit hammer shot to refill in the blanks. And then you can always come back with explosive rounds to try to keep them down. Notice those explosive rounds take a good bit of energy, so you want to try to minimize their use. 4 ads in a group that bunch up, you want to drop some mortar volleys on them. Boom, boom, boom. Followed up with some hail of bolts. It takes a good chunk of energy, but not so much as the mortar volley. And then lastly, if they get too close to you and you want to get that final tick of supercharge, you're going to click this up and it's going to give you 2 supercharges. Plus it'll give you an increase to healing and critical for a few minutes. So let's build up our supercharge to 10. Now we're a healer. We're going to go in and heal our buddies while they're fighting. Our combat rotation is healing, as we want to get supercharges as fast as possible. So all these straight across the board will give us supercharges as we move across the board here. The full auto and the hammer shot will give you a lot of supercharges, give you 2 at a time, so it's pretty good with the combat proficiencies that we've selected. Once you get your supercharged cell, we're going to tick on that one. That's going to increase our healing, boost it by 5%, and then we want to drop this out. As you remember, we're running, currently we're using rocket-fueled vapors, which will give Cultopod a second longer of lasting, plus it gives us an additional 5% healing. Once we get our supercharged cell, though, we want to go through as many heals as we can because we got 8 seconds to get additional healing out. So let's build up our supercharges. As healing, in between fights, if there are no bad guys around, in between fights, a way to build up your healing is to target one of your team members and hit them with med shot. I'm shooting myself with med shot, and as you see, it gives the person increased damage, increased critical, and increased healing. It also gives us a free supercharge. So you can hit them with med shot. That gives you 1 time each. It just gives you 1. It's pretty slow, but if there's nobody around to shoot at, it's one way you can do while you're running to your next target, your next waypoint, and whatever you're going on, so you can hit it up. So we're going to get us up to 10. We got up to 10. Next, we're going to hit it. We're going to do our Cultopod. Then we want to do back to infusion. As you can see, we're getting all these cool power-ups for healing, additional healing. And then we've got successive treatment, which eventually gives us armor boost. and we've got invigorated, so our healing is increased. It leaves invigorated on the person that you're healing, so their healing that they receive is increased, plus it gives them an armor rating for 40 seconds. And it's pretty nice to use all three of these in succession as we move through here. The back to infusion, the advanced medical probe, and the successive treatment. If you notice, when I clicked the back to infusion, it boosted up and triggered our advanced medical probe. And if you're using running restoration, then the advanced medical probe can be activated while you're running. Also, it will allow it to heal for an additional 15%. So let's try that out. I just stuck that in. So we're going to wait for this to time out and see what the difference is here. Now we've got an advanced medical probe up, and it just healed us for 49,000, 9,000, 3,000, 3,000, 4,000. So it's done a pretty good chunk of healing by clicking that in and helping that out. Now we're going to run up this successive treatment because we want to see what that does. It's going to give successive treatment 5%, give you a 5% boost, plus it's going to give us some extra stacks, up to 4 stacks. So let's click successive treatment and see what we get. We got 4 stacks, 5 stacks. It gave us 4 stacks of supercharged with that one, plus it gave us a boost for healing, which is pretty nice. We already had 1 stack, so we're up to 5. So we can hit it again, and that'll bring us up to 9. Now we're up to 10. Perfect day. Then we hit this, bam, 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 and then we're gonna hit 4 supercharges by hitting this one. So that one works out really well if you're gonna use successive treatment. It gives you some added boosts there. The thing you'll probably use the most is the green cloud, the Cultopod, so you can use that. Just click that. I keep it on rocket fuel vapors in for just about everything. And then if you need any other additional small time boosting, you can always click your medical probe. Very important though is that you're going to use your field aid, and before you run into combat, you're going to want to put a trauma probe on all of your teammates, and we'll talk more about that in gameplay. So we got that. It gives you 7 heals to take damage on, so they get minor healing up to 7 times for damage. We'll get more into that in gameplay. For your shields, you have several options for shields. The first is your lowering threat, is your diversion. That will lower your threat if at any time you get caught up and there's too much going on, and because you have such high critical, you will draw threat, and so that's one way to lower it, but you see it has a very long cooldown. You also have as your power up, your basic heal, I guess, is going to be your adrenaline rush. That's going to boost you up significantly for your supercharges, plus it's going to boost some of your stats, and it's going to trigger adrenaline rush, and it's going to lower your damage you take, and if your health gets low, it's going to give you a big boost to your healing. And if you remember in your combat proficiencies, if you took Adrenal Surge, it'll give you 60% healing of your maximum health versus the 40% that you get now with it. And then lastly, you have Echoing Deterrence, which is another shield that you have. It's a shield that absorbs incoming direct damage for 6 seconds, and it reflects 50% of the damage back. And it will heal you for a maximum 5% of your health. And so it's an okay shield to use. I usually use it mostly in PvP. It comes in handy. I've not ever used it in PVE, I don't think. It does have an extensively long cooldown, but if you take that says a 2-minute cooldown, but it's 1 minute here, so we're good to go because of the combat proficiencies that we've taken. The last shield is a reactive shield. This is just a damage reduction, straight up 25% damage reduction. All of these have 2 and 1 minute cooldowns, so time these out. If you pop them all at once, it's gonna be too bad for you because you have to wait a long time for them to come back up. Another way you can escape damage is a lot of tunes have ways to jump forward. You as a combat medic, as a trooper, a commando, can go backwards. So the other way, if you can't drop threat and the propulsion doesn't work and they keep coming, the ads keep coming, you can always just hit propulsion round, boom, and that'll kick you back. The concussion shield gives us 2 supercharges, and this propulsion round just pushes us back, and you can have up to 2 of those, and so that can give you a good second to get away. Hold the line gear grants you immunity, so if you remember in your combat proficiencies we talked about, there's a lot of movement impairing immunity that you have. This will give you the same thing. It's pretty nice. And then we've got our cleanse, which is our field aid, and that's cleanse for a friendly target. So if your buddy is getting a lot of debuffs going, you just cast that on them and it will cleanse them and give them periodic healing as well. So it comes in pretty handy when you're running through the place. So with that brings us to the end of our combat rotation and the options that we use. In the last video we're going to talk about is some basic gameplay tips for new healers trying to start out. Thanks so much. Have a good day.